Finalists. This was a team that I really thought had a shot at winning this. And I thought they had a shot at winning it because they played Detroit in the final. And this was the year that Detroit broke through and proved that they weren't just a regular season team. It had taken them a while, about a decade, but they finally did it. But Philly, again, here we are. They're in the finals, and this is the third time I've talked about Philly being in the finals, and they don't win it. And they're getting further away with each appearance. But don't worry, Philly fans. There's at least one more video with your name on it coming up. And this was, to me anyways, if I had been a Philly fan, this is the one that would have hurt the most. Because this was the Legion of Doom at its height. This was Lindros at his best. And they failed. But first round, they faced Pittsburgh. And this series was a fight, but it was a one-sided one. 5-1, 3-2, and 5-3 were the scores of the first three games for Philly to go up 3-0. They lost game 4, 4-1. They won game 5, 6-3 to move on to the next round. The only round they'd play on the road against the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres being favored. The idea being, okay, Hasek's going to take them to the promised land. And no. Philly rattles off 3 wins again to start the round. 5-3, 2-1, and 4-1. They lost in overtime in the fourth game, 5-4. The only overtime game they would play that year. And then in game 5, they won 6-3. And it's funny that they lost their only overtime game because I really think that if teams had been able to adjust better and just get them into overtime a little more regularly, I think Philly would have struggled. Against the Rangers, they win game 1, 3-1. They lose game 2, 5-4, meaning this is a tie series. This is going to be... No, they rattle off 3 wins in a row. 6-3, 3-2, and 4-2. And as I remember, Detroit was running over everybody on the western side of the board. So again, it was like, okay, so we're rushing to the end of the playoffs. And then it's a sweep in the finals. There's no way to know how a finals is going to go. Teams are far less familiar with one another than against conference or divisional opponents. And sometimes it can be one-sided, and sometimes the team just doesn't adjust. In the finals, Detroit wins 4-2, 4-2, 6-1, and 2-1. And there are a lot of dividing lines, but really for me, I really think that goaltending let Philly down. And I know. That's a sore topic for Philly fans, and this is going back 21 years. And this has kind of been an ongoing issue with Philly. But scoring-wise, Lindros leads the way with 12 goals and 14 assists. Red asterisks means Hall of Fame. Rod Brindamore, 13 goals and 8 assists. John LeClair, 9 goals and 12 assists. Every year there are people who will say LeClair probably deserves some more consideration for the Hall of Fame than he gets. I'm on the okay if he doesn't get inside of things, but I can understand the other side as well. Yanni Niinimaa with 1 goal, 12 assists. Michael Renberg, 5 goals and 6 assists. Eric Desjardins, 2 goals and 8 assists. Dinas Zubris with 5 goals and 4 assists. Paul Coffey shows up again on this board. 1 goal and 8 assists. So he was on the Detroit team that failed to win the Stanley Cup. And now he's on the Philly team that fails to win the Stanley Cup. Paul Coffey bounced around a lot towards the end of his career. Trent Klatt, 4 goals and 3 assists. I like Trent Klatt myself. I thought he was a good player. Sean Podine, 4 goals and 3 assists. Dale Hawerchuk, 2 goals and 5 assists. And this would have been as close as he got to a Stanley Cup. Chris Therien, 1 goal and 6 assists. Joel Otto, 1 goal and 5 assists. Easy to forget that Joel Otto was a Flyer. And kind of remember him as just being a Flame his entire career. Pat Falloon, 3 goals and an assist. The answer to the trivia question, who was drafted right after Eric Lindros. And it was kind of a big deal when Falloon went to Philly and was playing with Lindros. It was kind of seen as like, oh, this is kind of fun. Vinny Prospal, 1 goal and 3 assists. He only played 5 games that spring. Garth Snow led the way in goal with 8 wins and 4 losses, 2.83 goals against average, .892 save percentage. Ron Hextall, 4 wins and 3 losses, 2.97 goals against, and an .892 save percentage. Now, of course, both of them, at the time I'm recording this, are general managers in the NHL. But when you see that Hextall was mostly the backup for Snow in those playoffs, and you look at some of the scores, it's funny because the goals against are fine because they won most of their games, but the save percentage isn't. That's why I'm saying if they'd been forced into overtime a little bit more, maybe Philly would have had some more struggles in those playoffs. but the offense was deadly with Lindros in control of it. So it was really, really hard to get them to that point. Coach, of course, Terry Murray. Terry Murray was a guy I kind of felt for. I thought he was a really decent coach. I think this was the only time he got in the Stanley Cup Finals as a coach, and it was a shame that he didn't get to win one. Both Terry and Brian Murray, really nice guys. I sometimes had a hard time differentiating between the two, but brothers being brothers and all. This was a good team. They had a good run, and in the end, they ran up against a Detroit team that was just basically impossible to stop because they'd had enough of being labeled as chokers in the playoffs, and they dispatched Philly in 4 games. So there you go, the 1997 Philadelphia Flyers, today's finalists. Thank you so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you so much for being out there. Makes it worth being in here, and I'll talk to you again soon.